So I'm going to talk about my least favorite books of 2024. I read 70 books and I had a pretty meh year with mostly like 2 to 3 star reads. So these are the ones that are on the very bottom for me. And I probably will get into some spoilers, but I will say beforehand if I'm going to go into spoiler territory. Coming in hot as my most hated book of 2024, that is Cursed Bread. And I was really excited to read this, and let me preface this by saying all of the books on here I was excited to read mostly, so it was really disappointing when it fell flat. The book is advertised as being about the real unsolved mystery of the 1951 mass poisoning of a French village. So our main character, Elodie, she is the local baker's wife, and she's basically like extremely horny and also lonely, and she's bored with her married life. And so when this new couple moves into town, she becomes obsessed with them. So I enjoy like a fever dream type of book and weird books in general, but I just found this so boring. The plot was nearly non-existent. The characters were really flat, so I couldn't even like enjoy it as like a character study type, And yeah, it was just really boring. And some of the writing was nice and pretty, but it wasn't even enough. And sometimes it is enough to make me like bump a book up, but no, it was not enough. I hated it. The second book is I Was a Teenage Slasher, and like the name would suggest, it's about a kid who becomes a teenage slasher, taking place in 1989 in Texas. And I was so excited to read this, but I genuinely could not comprehend what the fuck I was reading. It felt like I had a head injury as I was reading this, as in a lot of the sentences were really clunky and disjointed, and the main character, he would go on these long-winded tangents that were really difficult to follow. I also didn't realize there would be a bit of a supernatural element to the book, which makes sense because it's like the slasher genre, but I wasn't expecting it, and so it made it really confusing initially. I didn't know what the hell was happening. So this is a book I probably should have DNF'd because I skimmed like the last 20% or so of the book. In third place, Dragging Mason County. This was a super interesting premise. It's a YA book. It's about these two best friends, and one of them is going to throw this debut drag extravaganza, drag show in their small country town. But despite the promising premise, it fell flat also. The main character, his name is Peter, and he's pretty bitter and he doesn't have a whole lot of introspection. I'd say he also had some internalized homophobia. But that was frustrating to read, and then the growth that he did have at the end, it didn't really feel authentic. It was pretty rushed. At the beginning of the book, he said something pretty heinous to another character, and I felt like that wasn't really addressed well enough, so it was just frustrating to read. Also, it was trying hard to be funny, but it really was not funny to me, and I know it's YA, but still. So yeah, unfortunately the themes of internalized homophobia and the main character's poor self-image, it wasn't explored very well, which was a big missed opportunity in my opinion. Moving right along though to number 4, The Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. I might make a whole video on why I hate this book. It's a really popular middle grade book that's often used in schools. It's about a girl named Avon who's disabled. She was born without arms, and her family moves to this rundown Western theme park because her dad gets like a job offer there. And I just found this again really boring, and it was in poor taste to joke about a disabled kid in the way that the author did. There was a comment where Avon's mom said to Avon's friend, they were like, Avon didn't know how to do anything when we first got her. Her foster family did everything for her, so she was basically a slug. A slug. There was quite a bit of rhetoric around around disability with pulling yourself up and like you're just differently abled, which it's important to make disabled kids feel confident in themselves and able to find accommodations for themselves and advocate and whatnot. But this is not an appropriate way to discuss that by calling them a slug. Now here's the spoiler territory, or just full-on spoilers. The author's depiction of adoption was horribly sloppy. So going into spoilers. At the park, there's this older woman who works there that Avon tries to get to know better, and at the very end, it's revealed that she's actually Avon's biological grandmother. How exciting. So she found out who Avon was adopted by, and she basically lured her family to this park with a job opportunity. At least I think that's how it happened, or she stalked them to the theme park. Either way, she followed them down. And I just thought that was really careless, because adoption can be traumatizing for people, and it is a huge thing. So to just like throw that onto someone. A lot of the boundaries in this book were like they didn't have well explored boundaries, if that makes sense. Actually, screw it, I'm gonna get into it here with this book. Another scene that happened is that Avon met this boy named Connor, who also has a disability. He has Tourette's, and he's insecure about it. So one day Avon asks if he wants to go to the movie theater, and he says no because he's insecure. And what does Avon and her mother do, you may ask? They tricked him into going to the movie theater. They took him there against his will. He nearly had an anxiety attack in the car when he realized that they tricked him and took him to the movie theater. That's what I mean by boundaries, just like a lack of boundaries. And I don't think that's a good thing to depict in a middle grade novel that's being used in schools. I hate this book. Coming in 5th place, The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This is a really popular YA book that follows the main character, Yami, who is a lesbian, but she moves into this rich, upper class, mostly white Catholic school. And because of that, she intends on staying deep within the closet. So again, a really super interesting premise that just fell flat. I personally thought it was poorly written. And yes, it's young adult, but I don't think that is an excuse to have poor writing. A lot of the plot felt rushed, and the character development that happened didn't make sense, a whole lot of sense. I also thought the main character's Catholicism would play a bigger role in the plot and character development, but it really did not. And then the romance, which I think is kind of like central to the book, was really boring. It was not very cute in my opinion, and I barely remember it because it was just not memorable. So into spoilers. Yami's dad, he was an activist, and he seemed fairly progressive, but he straight up just abandoned her after she confessed to him that she was gay. He like completely cut contact off with her. And her mom, on the other hand, was fairly homophobic at the beginning of the book and throughout the book. But then at the end, when she learns that her brother is bisexual and her daughter is gay, she turns around pretty quick and is suddenly baking them like pride cupcakes and stuff. Trigger warning, I think if I remember right, the brother might have been trying to harm himself or something, or he got sick. And so she does turn around quick, which kind of makes sense with that. But it just seemed like black and white without a lot of nuance, because then the mom calls the dad and they all like cuss him out and like stand up for themselves. But it just like, I don't know, it was a really quick turnaround that seemed to lack some nuance, I guess, in how it was portrayed. So that was just frustrating to see. And then the very final book is The Final Girl Support Club or Support Group. I sort of hate read Grady Hendrix. I'm just gonna be honest, I do, because I think his writing kind of sucks in my opinion, but the plot is sometimes entertaining enough that like I will follow it, like the one where they're trying to sell a house and it's like haunted by puppets. I thought that was really funny. I liked that. But this one, the only character I was rooting for throughout the book was the main character's like pet plant. I found everyone annoying. This of course follows like the final girl trope in slashers. So all of these girls were the final girls who survived being slashed, and they come together for support therapy. But the pacing was just weird. It's like too much going on, yet not enough either. So it just was not great. And then spoilers, I believe the psychologist who like ran the group was like the evil person in it, which I could just kind of see coming from like a mile away. I could tell where it was going, and it just was boring because of it, and it was not necessary. I guess no book is necessary, but I was excited to read this one. So that is my least favorite reads of the year, some of them my most hated reads of the year and all of time maybe. These are just my opinions. I'm not a writer or anything, so I don't have much like say in what good writing necessarily is. Some of them are really popular, so honestly I wouldn't let it discourage you from reading them if you think it's an interesting premise. Anyways, if you watched this, thanks for watching me ramble about this, and yeah,